My name is Brooke, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. I have a 401k I've been contributing to since I was 24, a used Honda Civic I paid off last spring, and a savings account I've been quietly building for 6 years. None of that happened because anyone handed it to me. It happened because every single time I wanted to spend money on something nice, I talked myself out of it and transferred the difference into that account instead. My brother's name is Derek. He's 28. He has never held a job for more than 8 months in a row. I want to be fair about him, because I know how easy it is to make a villain out of the person who isn't telling the story. Derek isn't cruel. He's not mean to me directly. What he is comfortable. Deeply, entirely comfortable with the idea that other people will figure things out for him. And for his entire adult life, those other people have been my parents. My parents are good people. I want to say that too. My dad spent 30 years as a postal worker. My mom did bookkeeping for a dental office until she retired. They didn't have a lot, but they weren't struggling either. They're the kind of people who clip coupons and then spend the savings on lottery scratchers, who worry about money constantly, but somehow always find it when Derek needs it. I grew up knowing, in the vague way kids know things before they have words for them, that the rules were different for me and Derek. When I was 16 and wanted to go to a summer coding camp, my parents said they couldn't afford it. I babysat for 3 families until I had enough to pay for it myself. When Derek was 16 and wanted a gaming PC, they financed it. I remember sitting at the kitchen table watching my dad enter his credit card number into the website, while Derek hovered behind him, and I didn't say anything. I just went to my room and opened my laptop, the old one with the cracked hinge, and kept working on a project for school. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was the older one, the responsible one. And that was just how families worked sometimes. I told myself a lot of things for a long time. After college, I moved to Austin for a job offer that felt too good to pass up. The distance helped. Not being home meant not watching the dynamic play out in real time. I talked to my parents on the phone. I visited for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and everything felt manageable from 500 miles away. But the calls started changing when Derek was about 24. He lost another job. I think it was the 3rd one that year, and he needed help with rent. My parents called to tell me about it the way you'd report a natural disaster, like it was something that had simply happened to him rather than something he'd done. My mom cried a little. My dad said they were going to help him, but it was going to be tight. I asked if they needed anything from me. I don't know why I asked that. I think part of me already knew the answer. My dad said, "Well, if you could chip in a couple hundred, just until he gets back on his feet." I sent $200. Derek texted me a thumbs-up emoji. That was 4 years ago. Since then, I have sent money to my family 11 times. 200 here, 300 there. Once it was 500 when Derek's car broke down and needed a repair. Each time my parents framed it as a temporary situation. Each time Derek got back on his feet just long enough to fall again, I kept a note on my phone with the running total. By last January, it was sitting at just over $3,000. I never asked to be paid back. I want to be honest about that. I made peace with the idea that it was gone. What I didn't make peace with was the way it was expected. Not requested. Expected. Like it was a tax I paid for the privilege of having moved away and made something of myself. Last February, something happened that I haven't really told anyone about, because it still makes me feel embarrassed about how long it took me to see clearly. My company gave out annual bonuses. Mine was significant. Not life-changing, but significant. Enough that I sat with it for a few weeks thinking about what to do. I talked to a financial advisor. I thought about paying down some of my student loans, putting a portion in a high-yield savings account, and using the rest as a down payment on a small condo. Austin's market had calmed down enough that it was starting to feel possible. I didn't tell my parents right away, not because I was hiding it, but because I was still figuring out what I wanted to do. And I've learned over the years that once my parents know I have extra money, the timeline on that money's existence gets very short. I spent about 6 weeks researching. I looked at condos in East Austin, in Round Rock, in Pflugerville. I had a realtor and everything. We found a place. A 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood built in 2019 with a little patio and a community pool. The price was in a range that worked. I made an offer. It was accepted. I was so happy I sat in my car in the parking garage at work and cried for about 10 minutes. Good crying. The kind where you're laughing a little at yourself for crying. I posted one photo on Instagram. Just the front of the building with the caption, "Officially a homeowner. Best gift I ever gave myself." 37 minutes later, my mom called. I answered thinking she'd seen the post and was calling to congratulate me. I was smiling when I picked up. She wasn't calling to congratulate me. She said she needed to talk to me about something important. Her voice had that particular quality it gets when she's rehearsed what she wants to say. She said that Derek and his girlfriend had been looking for a place to live, and that things were really difficult right now, and that she and my dad had been thinking, since I had this new condo, whether there was some way the family could work something out. I waited because I genuinely did not understand what she was suggesting. She said, "Well, maybe Derek and Kylie could stay there, just for a little while they get stable." I said, "Mom, I bought that condo to live in." She said she understood that, but that family helps family, and that the place had 2 bedrooms, and surely I could make it work. I sat down on my couch. I was still in my apartment at the time, hadn't moved yet, and I just stared at the wall for a second. I said I used my savings and my bonus for the down payment. This is something I worked 6 years for. She said she knew that, and that she was proud of me, but that Derek really needed this right now. I asked what my dad thought. She put him on. He said pretty much the same thing. Softer, the way he always does. Not making demands, just expressing that he hoped I'd consider it, that it would mean a lot to the family. I said I needed to think about it and I'd call them back. I hung up, and I sat very still for a long time. The thing I kept coming back to wasn't even the audacity of the request, though it was audacious. It was the timing. 37 minutes. My post was 37 minutes old. My mom had seen it, understood immediately what it meant in terms of my financial situation, called my dad, and they had formulated a plan and picked up the phone. In 37 minutes. That's how fast they moved when something might benefit Derek. I thought about my coding camp at 16. I thought about the $3,000. I thought about every time I'd bitten my tongue at Christmas dinner, when my parents talked about how hard things were for Derek, how the world was just harder for some people, how you had to support your family. I called my friend Vanessa. She's known me since college and she has never once sugarcoated anything for me. I told her the whole thing. When I was done, there was a pause, and then she said, "Brooke, what are you actually considering here?" I said I didn't know. She said, "You do know. You just don't want to feel like a bad person for knowing." She was right. I'd spent so long trying not to be the selfish daughter, the one who moved away and forgot about her family, that I'd made myself into a resource instead of a person. And resources don't get to have feelings about how they're used. I called my parents back 2 days later. I told them that I would not be offering Derek and his girlfriend my condo. I told them I had worked for 6 years to save that money, that no one had helped me do it, and that I was going to use it for the purpose I'd intended, to give myself a stable place to live. My dad went quiet. My mom said she was surprised at me. She said that when Derek needed something, I always found a way to make it difficult. I asked her, gently, to repeat what she just said. She did. I let that sit for a second. Then I said, "I want you to think about what you're describing as difficult. I'm not giving away a home I purchased with my own money. That's the difficulty." She said that it wasn't about giving it away, that Derek would pay rent eventually, that it was just about helping him get started. I asked how that was different from what had already happened over the past 4 years. No one spoke. My dad said, quietly, that they were a little worried I was becoming someone who only thought about herself. I told him I was becoming someone who thought about herself enough, and that those were different things. My mom said she was going to have to pray about this. I said okay. I told them I loved them. I hung up. The next few weeks were rough in a way I hadn't expected. It wasn't just my parents, it was the extended reach of the situation. My aunt called me. Then my cousin. Then a woman who I think is my mom's best friend from church whose number I didn't even have saved. They all had variations of the same message. Derek was struggling. Family was supposed to look out for each other. I had more than enough, and was I really going to be the kind of person who wouldn't help? I had the same conversation so many times that I started getting ahead of it. When my aunt said, "You know Derek's really in a tough spot," I said, "I know, and I hope he finds a stable situation soon," and I'd let the silence be hers to fill. I didn't argue. I didn't justify. I had learned, somewhere in those few weeks, that justifying was a trap. The moment you start explaining why you deserve what you have, you've accepted the premise that it was up for debate. My cousin Kevin was actually the one who said the quiet part out loud. He said, "You know your parents were going to leave that condo to you eventually, and now they're saying they're reconsidering the will." I said, "Kevin, my parents don't own the condo, I do." There was a pause. He said, "Oh. Yeah." I moved into the condo in April. I set up my home office in the second bedroom. I painted the walls in the living room a color called sage shadow that I had agonized over for 2 weeks and that I love completely. I hung art I'd had in storage for 3 years because my apartment hadn't had enough wall space. I bought a real dining table, not a folding one. And I ate dinner at it the first night, and it was the best meal I've ever had, which wasn't about the food. My brother texted me in May. Not about the condo, not about money. He just sent a picture of his dog doing something ridiculous and said, "Lo Cam." It was the most normal interaction we'd had in years. I laughed and texted back. I didn't respond to that as a sign that everything was fine, but I noticed it. My mom called in June. She didn't bring up the condo. She asked about my job, about whether I was going to come home for the 4th of July. I said I wasn't, that I was planning to spend it with friends here. She said okay. It was short and a little careful, but she didn't push. My dad texted me separately later that night. He said he was sorry for how things had gone. He said he didn't think they'd handled it well. He didn't promise that things would be different with Derek, and I appreciated that. I would have recognized that promise as empty. He just said he was sorry and that he missed me. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I said, "I miss you too, Dad. I think we'll figure it out." I meant it. But I also understood, finally, at 32, that figuring it out was going to require something I had never really allowed myself before. I was going to have to care about what I needed with the same seriousness that I'd always given to everyone else's crises. It turns out that's not selfishness. It just looks like it from where certain people are standing. The condo has a patio that faces east. In the mornings, I make coffee and I sit out there and I watch the sun come up over the roofline across the street. No one is calling me to ask for anything. No one is explaining to me why someone else's needs are more urgent than my own. It's just me, the coffee, the light. I worked 6 years for that patio. I'd do it again. Have you ever had to choose yourself in a way your family couldn't understand? I'd genuinely like to know. Drop it in the comments below. I used to think that being a good daughter meant making myself smaller whenever someone else needed more space. I did it for so long that I stopped noticing I was doing it. The $3,000. The coding camp I paid for myself at 16. The years of watching my parents find money for Derek that they'd told me didn't exist. None of it felt like a pattern while I was inside it. It just felt like life. Like the way things were. What I understand now is that every choice has a direction. When my parents handed Derek money he hadn't earned and absorbed consequences he should have faced, they weren't just helping him. They were teaching him that effort was optional. That someone would always catch him. And they were teaching me the opposite, that my effort was expected, that my stability was a resource, that my success existed to serve a need I hadn't created. Neither lesson was spoken out loud. Both landed anyway. The condo didn't change my family. I want to be clear about that, because I think there's a version of this story where the daughter holds her ground and everyone learns something and the credits roll. That's not what happened. Derek is still figuring his life out. My mom still worries about him the way she has always worried about him. The dynamic that shaped my entire childhood didn't dissolve because I said no one time. But something did shift. Not in them, in me. When I stopped justifying and started just deciding, I felt the difference immediately. Justifying is exhausting because it accepts the premise that you owe someone an explanation for your own choices. Deciding is just quiet. You make the call, you live with it, and you don't wait for approval that was never coming anyway. Vanessa said something to me that I keep coming back to. She said, "You do know. You just don't want to feel like a bad person for knowing." She was right. The clarity had been there the whole time. What I'd been doing was managing everyone else's reaction to my clarity. Softening it, delaying it, apologizing for it. The moment I stopped doing that, I got 6 years of savings back in a different form. Not as money. As a patio that faces east and a dining table that's mine, and a second bedroom that I use for work because I decided to. That's what I want to say to anyone watching this who recognizes something in Brooke's story. Not that your family is wrong to love the people they love. Not that cutting people off is the answer. Just this, the energy you spend shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations is real energy. It comes from somewhere, and it stops going somewhere else. Every time I talked myself out of something I wanted because I thought the money might be needed, I was making a bet on someone who wasn't making the same bet on me. You get to stop making that bet. That's not selfishness. It just looks like it from certain angles. The people standing at those angles are usually the ones who benefited most from the version of you that hadn't figured that out yet.